In literature, there are more than 100 different definitions of leadership, but in summary, leadership is an influence process. Anytime you try to influence the mind and actions of others toward goal accomplishment, you are engaging in leadership. It is the capacity to influence others by unleashing their power and potential to impact the greater good. Goal accomplishment is not enough. The key phrase is greater good. It is about what is best for all involved. The next few slides target to define leadership by different approaches and not by timeline. Leadership is a trait. Trait is inherited, then so leaders are born and not being made. Some argue that focusing on traits makes leadership an elitist enterprise because it implies that only a few people with special talents will lead. Although there may be some truth to this argument, it can also be argued that all of us are born with a wide array of unique traits and that many of these traits can have a positive impact on our leadership. It also may be possible to modify or change some traits. Leader has ability. Ability is a natural capacity and can be acquired. In leadership, some have natural ability to lead, while others are being developed through hard work and practice. Trait approach. The early trait approach theories were called great man theories because they focused on identifying the innate qualities and characteristics possessed by great social, political, and military leaders such as Abraham Lincoln, Moses, and Joan of Arc. Studies of leadership traits were especially strong from 1900s to the early 1940s and enjoyed a renewed emphasis beginning in the 1970s as researchers began to examine visionary and charismatic leadership. In the 1980s, researchers linked leadership to the big five personality factors, while interest in emotional intelligence as a trait gained favor in the 1990s. Behavior approach. In the late 1930s, and leadership research began to focus on behavior, what leaders do and how they act. Groundbreaking studies by researchers at the Ohio State University and the University of Michigan in the 1940s and 1950s analyzed how leaders acted in small group situations. Behavior approach theories hit their heyday in the early 1960s with Blake and Moulton in 1964, work exploring how managers use task and relationship behaviors in organizational setting. Situational approach. The premise of this approach is that different situations demand different kinds of leadership. Serious examination of situational approach theories began in the late 1960s by Hershey and Blanchard and Redin. Situational approaches continued to be redefined and revised from the 1970s through the 1990s. One of these path goal theory examines how leaders use employee motivation to enhance performance and satisfaction. Another approach, contingency theory, focuses on the match between the leader style and specific situational variables. Relational approach. In the 1990s, researchers began examining the nature of relations between leaders and followers. This research ultimately evolved into the leader member exchange, or LMX theory. LMX theory predicts that high quality relations generate more positive leader outcomes than low quality relations. Research in the relational approach to leadership continues to generate moderate interest today. New leadership approach. When these approaches began appearing in the mid 1980s, 3 decades ago, they were and continue to be called new leadership approaches. Beginning with the work of vast leadership studies generated visionary or charismatic leadership theories. From these approaches developed transformational leadership theory, which describes leadership as a process that changes people and organizations. Emerging leadership approaches. A diverse range of approaches to leadership is engaging during the 21st century. First, adaptive leadership. It examines how leaders help people address problems, face challenges, and adapt to change. Adaptive leadership stresses that the leaders don't solve the problem but rather encourage others to do the problem solving and adapt to change. Second, authentic leadership. It is an approach that looks at the authenticity of leaders and their leadership and is currently enjoying strong interest. Third, spiritual leadership. It considers how leaders use values as a sense of calling and membership to motivate followers. Next is servant leadership. It emphasizes the caring principle with leaders as servants who focus on the followers' needs in order to help these followers become more autonomous, knowledgeable, and like servants themselves. And lastly, gender based studies, which have gained much momentum as women continue to become more dominant in the workforce, especially on a global level. View how one's gender affects and differentiates one leadership. Leadership is a skill. Conceptualized as a skill, leadership is a competency developed to accomplish a task effectively. Skilled leaders are competent people who know the means and methods for carrying out their responsibilities. Leadership is a skill that can be developed. Anybody can be a leader because the skills can be developed. Leadership is also a behavior. It is what leaders do when they are in a leadership role. The behavioral dimension is concerned with how leaders act toward others in various situations. Unlike traits, abilities, and skills, leadership behaviors are observable. When someone leads, we see that person's leadership behavior. Leadership is a relationship. Another and a somewhat unusual way to think about leadership is a relationship. From this perspective, leadership is centered on the communication between leaders and followers rather than on the unique qualities of the leader. Thought of as a relationship, leadership becomes a process of collaboration that occurs between leaders and followers. A leader affects and is affected by followers, and both leader and followers are affected in turn by the situation that surrounds them. According to Peter Northouse, leadership is an influence process. It's the final way of thinking about what leadership is. Defining leadership as an influence process means that it is not a trait or an ability that resides in the leader, but rather an interactive event that occurs between the leader and the followers. Influence is central to the process of leadership because leaders affect followers. Leaders direct their energies toward influencing individuals to achieve something together. Stressing common goals gives leadership an ethical dimension because it lessens the possibility that leaders might act toward followers in ways that use coercion or are unethical. But, in my own opinion, leadership is not only about influence process. Leadership is about achieving the goal and having the greater good at the back of your mind. What is the best for those people who are involved? And not only the people who are involved, but in the situation they are in. It is getting the best beneficial way for each and everyone. That is what a leadership for me. Now, how do you find leadership? Regardless of those same characteristics and behaviors that distinguish leadership can positive ways. The dark side of leadership is the destructive side of leadership, where a leader uses his or her influence or power for personal ends. It is defined that such leaders are toxic, where their leadership leaves their followers worse off than they found them, often violating the basic human rights of others and playing to their followers' best fears. Dark leadership is able to thrive when three conditions exist: a destructive leader, susceptible followers, and a conducive environment. Leadership traits in practice. Throughout history, there have been many great leaders. Each of them has led with unique talents and in different circumstances. The following section analyzes the accomplishments and the traits of five famous leaders. Although there are hundreds of equally distinguished leaders, these five are highlighted because they represent different kinds of leadership at different points in history. All of these leaders are recognized as being notable leaders. Each has had an impact on many people's lives and accomplished great things. George Washington is considered to be the founding father of the United States of America. His leadership was pivotal to the development of this country's government. He was truly respected by everyone, from low ranking soldiers to feisty public officials. He was a man of great integrity who was a good listener. After the Revolutionary War, Washington was the reason that various factions did not splinter into smaller groups or nations. He became the United States' first president because his leadership was so well suited for the times. Born into a prosperous Virginia family, he grew up on a large plantation. His father died when he was 11. Washington received formal schooling for 7 years and then worked as a surveyor. He entered the military at the age of 20. During the French and Indian War, Washington learned about the difficulties of battle and experienced both victories and defeats. He served as Commander in Chief of the Continental Army from 1775 to 1783. His leadership was instrumental in the leading the colonies to victory over Great Britain in the Revolutionary War. After the war, he retired to farm for a short period. In 1787, however, his interest in politics, the nation took him to constitutional conventions in Philadelphia, where he was chosen to preside over the successful creation of the United States Constitution. After the Constitution was ratified, Washington was elected by 100% of the Electoral College as the first President of the United States. Washington served 2 terms as president. Although he had the people's support, he chose not to serve a third term. He retired to Mount Vernon in 1797 and died there from pneumonia at the age of 67. At his funeral, one of his officers, Henry Lee, eulogized him as an American who was first in war, first in peace, and first in the heart of his countrymen. The traits and characteristics of George Washington exhibited many special leadership traits. Researchers identify him as a modest man with great moral character who demonstrated integrity, virtuousness, and wisdom in his leadership. Though neither highly educated nor brilliant, he is reported to have read 10 newspapers each day. He was tall and careful about his appearance. For much of his life, he kept a daily record of his work. Although reserved as a military leader, he was brave and tenacious. Rather than use power to his own ends, he gave up his position as commander in chief after the war. Washington provided stability, reason, and order after the American Revolution, where the United States was in its formative stages. His evenness made him predictable to the American people who considered him trustworthy. Above all, Washington was a prudent leader who made sound judgments and provided balance and wisdom to the new government. Washington was a special leader with many unique talents and was great because he was good. Winston Churchill, 1874 1965. Winston Churchill was one of the greatest statesmen and orators of the 20th century. In addition, he was a talented painter, a prolific writer. He received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953. Churchill served in the military during World War I, became Prime Minister of the Great Britain in May 1940. He remained in that office through World War II until 1945. It was at this time that his masterful leadership was not visible. When the Germans threatened to invade Britain, Churchill stood strong. He made many famous speeches that had far-reaching effects on the morale of the people of Great Britain and the Allied forces. On the home front, he was a social reformer. He served a second term as Prime Minister from 1951 to 1955. He died at the age of 90 in 1965. Traits and characteristics of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill's leadership was remarkable because it emerged from a man who was average in many respects and who faced challenges in his personal life. In his education, he did not stand out as a superior to others. On a societal level, he was a loner who had few friends. On a personal level, he suffered from bouts of depression throughout his life. Despite these characteristics, Churchill emerged as a leader because of his other unique gifts and how he used them. A voracious reader, Churchill was plain speaking, decisive, detail-oriented, and informed. Furthermore, he was very ambitious, but not out of self-interest. He wanted what was right for others, and he wanted the best for Great Britain. His most significant talent was his masterful use of language. In his oratory, he normally plain spoken. Churchill used words and imagery in powerful ways that touched the hearts of many and set the moral climate of the war. He had the ability to build hope and inspire others to rise to the challenge. His stoicism and optimism were an inspiration to his people and all of the Allied forces. Mother Teresa, 1910-1997. A Roman Catholic nun considered a saint by many, Mother Teresa received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979 for her work with the poor and helpless in Calcutta, India, and throughout the world. Born in Macedonia, Mother Teresa came from a comfortable background. At the age of 18, she joined the Catholic Sisters of Loreto Order and worked for 17 years as a high school teacher in Calcutta. Her awareness of poverty in Calcutta caused her to leave the convent in 1948 to devote herself to working full-time with the poorest of the poor in the slums of the city. In 1950, Mother Teresa founded a new religious order, the Missionaries of Charity, to care for the hungry, homeless, unwanted, and unloved. Today, there are more than 1 million workers affiliated with the Missionaries of Charity in more than 40 countries. The charity provides help to people who have been hurt by floods, epidemics, famines, and war. The Missionaries of Charity also operate hospitals, schools, orphanages, youth centers, shelters for the sick, and hospice. For her humanitarian work and efforts for peace, Mother Teresa has been recognized with many awards, including the Pope John XXIII Peace Prize in 1971, the Nehru Award in 1972, the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1985, and the Congressional Gold Medal in 1994. Although she struggled with deteriorating health in her last years, Mother Teresa remained actively involved in her work to the very end. She died at the age of 87 in 1997. In September 2016, Pope Francis declared Mother Teresa a saint with the official name of Mother Teresa of Calcutta in the statement announcing the canonization. The Vatican called her a metaphor for selfless devotion and holiness. Traits and characteristics of Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was a simple woman of small stature who dressed in a plain blue and white sari, and who never owned more than the people she served. Mirroring her appearance, her mission was simple: to care for the poor. From her first year on the streets of Calcutta, where she tended to one dying person, to her last years, when thousands of people were cared for by the missionaries of charity, Mother Teresa stayed focused on her goal. She was a true civil servant who was simultaneously determined and fearless and humble and spiritual. She often listened to the will of God. She criticized for her stand on abortion, on women's role in the family, or her approaches to eliminating poverty. Mother Teresa responded with a strong will. She never wavered in her deep-seated human values, teaching by example with few words. She was a role model for others. Clearly, Mother Teresa was a leader who practiced what she preached. Bill Gates. For many years, William or Bill H. Gates III, co-founder and chair of Microsoft Corporation, the world's largest developer of software for personal computers, was the wealthiest person in the world with assets estimated or more than 70 billion. A self-made man, Gates began his interest in computers at the age of 13 when he and his friend developed their first computer software program. He later attended Harvard University but left, without graduating, to focus on software development. He co-founded Microsoft in 1975. Under Gates' leadership, Microsoft developed a well-known Microsoft Disk Operating System, or MS-DOS, Windows Operating System, and Internet Explorer browser. Microsoft is one of the fastest growing and most profitable companies ever established. From the success of Microsoft, Gates and his wife established the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2000 to reduce inequities and improve lives around the world. This foundation promotes education, addresses global health issues such as malaria, HIV/AIDS, and tuberculosis, sponsors libraries, and supports housing and community initiatives in the Pacific Northwest. Beginning in 2006, Gates transitioned away from his day-to-day operating role at Microsoft to spend more time working with his foundation, but he remained the corporation's chair. But in February 2014, Gates stepped down as the company's board chairman in order to increase his involvement in the company's operations, serving in a new role of technology advisor and mentor to the company's new CEO, Satya Nadella. Gates continued to tackle global challenges as a co-chair of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has become the world's largest private charitable foundation. Traits and characteristics of Bill Gates. Bill Gates is both intelligent and visionary. When he co-founded Microsoft, he had the vision about how to meet the technological needs of people in the future, and he hired friends to help him accomplish that vision. Gates is also task-oriented and diligent, often working 12 or more hours a day to promote his interest in software product development. Furthermore, Gates is focused and aggressive. When Microsoft was accused by the U.S. government of antitrust violations, Gates appeared before a congressional hearing and strongly defended his company. When asked about whether he has a win at all costs mentally, he answered that you bring people together to work on products and make products better, but there is never a finish line. There are always challenges ahead. In his personal style, Gates is simple, straightforward, unpretentious, and altruistic. He has demonstrated a strong concern for the poor and undeserved. Oprah Winfrey, 1954 to present. An award winning television talk show host, Oprah Winfrey is one of the most powerful and influential women in the world. Born in rural Mississippi into a dysfunctional family, she was raised by her grandmother until she was 6. Winfrey learned to read at a very early age and skipped 2 grades in school. Her adolescent years were difficult. While living in inner city Milwaukee with her mother, who worked 2 jobs, Winfrey was molested by a family member. Despite these experiences, she was an honor student in high school and received national accolades for her oratory ability. She received a full scholarship to Tennessee State University, where she studied communication and worked at the local radio station. Winfrey's work in the media eventually led her to Chicago, where she became host of the highly acclaimed Oprah Winfrey Show. In 2007, Winfrey was the highest paid entertainer in television, earning an annual salary estimated at $260 million. dollars. She also is an actress, a producer, a book critic, and a magazine publisher. And in 2011, she left her successful television show to concentrate on her own television network, OWN. For years, Winfrey had publicly battled her weight, using her struggles as inspiration for her millions of fans to lead healthier lives. In 2015, Winfrey became a 10% stockholder on board member of the diet empire Weight Watchers. Winfrey, who has a long shown an interest in health issues and dieting programs, serves as an advisor to the company, using her undeniable clout to further encourage others to engage in healthier lifestyle. Her total wealth is estimated at more than $3.1 billion. dollars. Winfrey is also a highly regarded philanthropist. Her giving has focused on making a difference in the lives of the underprivileged and poor. Winfrey has paid special attention to the needs of people in Africa, raising millions of dollars to help AIDS affected children there, and creating a leadership academy for girls in a small town near Johannesburg, South Africa. Traits and characteristics. Oprah Winfrey's remarkable journey from rural poverty to influential world leader can be explained by several of her strengths. Foremost, Winfrey is an excellent communicator. Since she was a little girl reciting Bible passages in church, she has been comfortable in front of an audience. On television, she's able to talk to millions of people and have each person feel as if she is talking directly to him or her. Winfrey is also intelligent and well read, with a strong business sense. She is sincere, determined, and inspirational. Winfrey has a charismatic style of leadership that enables her to connect with people. She is spontaneous and expressive and has a fearless ability to self disclose. Because she has been in the struggle and survived, she is seen as role model. Winfrey has overcome many obstacles in her life and encourages others to overcome their struggles as well. Her message is a message of hope. All of these individuals have exhibited exceptional leadership. While each of these leaders is unique, together they share many common characteristics. All are visionary, strong willed, diligent, and inspirational. As purpose driven leaders, they are role models and symbols of hope. Reflecting on the characteristics of these extraordinary leaders will provide you with a better understanding of the traits that are important for effective leadership. Although you may not aspire to be another Bill Gates or Mother Teresa, you can learn a great deal from these leaders in understanding how your own traits affect your leadership.
Let's move to strength based leadership. Strengths are defined as positive features of ourselves that make us effective and help us flourish. For example, a person who is good at drawing became a successful architect using drawing skill as a strength. There are a lot of researches that talk about leadership, but there are only two overlapping researches that concentrated on strength based leadership. First, Researchers at the Gallup organization initiated a massive study that included interviews of over 2 million people to describe what's right with people. That is, their talents and what they're good at, rather than what's wrong with people. This was spearheaded by the late Donald O. Clifton. Gallup researchers designed and published the Strength Finder profile. Strength Finder is one of the most widely used assessment questionnaire in the world and has been completed by more than 10 million people and still counting. Second, positive psychology. Researchers on positive psychology initiated by Martin Seligman. Specifically, positive psychology can be defined as the scientific study of what makes life worth living. It addresses people's positive experiences, such as their happiness and joy, and people's positive traits. This makes it invaluable for understanding strengths based leadership. Strength can also be certain talents developed by additional knowledge, skills, and practice. In identifying and measuring strengths, three major groups were identified. Number one, Gallup and the Strength Finders profile. Gallup researchers interviewed an enormous number of executives, salespeople, teachers, doctors, nurses, and other professionals about their strengths and what made them good at what they did. Gallup researchers extracted 34 patterns or themes that they thought did the best job at explaining excellent performance. To facilitate understanding, they developed a configuration that depicts four domains of leadership strengths. The four domains are accepting, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. These domains were derived from information obtained during interviews with thousands of executive teams and from a factor analysis of the Gallup Talents dataset. Number 2. Values in Action Institute and Inventory Strengths. Researchers at the Values in Action, or VIA, Institute, led by Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson, were engaged in a project to develop a framework for the field of positive psychology that defined and conceptualized character strengths. To develop the classification, they reviewed philosophical and spiritual literature in Confucianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judeo-Christianity, ancient Greece, and Islam to determine whether there were commonalities that consistently emerge across cultures regarding virtues. From the review, they identified 6 universal core virtues: courage, justice, humanity, temperance, transcendence, and wisdom. These 6 virtues represent the basic structure around which Seligman and Peterson developed the Virtue in Action classification of character strengths. Number 3. Center of Applied Positive Psychology and the R2 Strengths Profiler Assessment, or CAPP. CAPP argued that strengths are more fluid than personality traits and can emerge over a lifetime through the different situations was experienced. The CAPP strengths perspective is represented in 2 quadrants labeled realized strengths, unrealized strengths, learned behaviors, and weaknesses. Realized strengths are personal attributes that represent our strongest assets. We are engaged when we use them because they help us perform well. Unrealized strengths is a personal attributes that we are less visible. We feel good when we tap into unrealized strengths because they support our efforts and help us achieve our goals. Learned behaviors. It is ingrained things we have learned throughout the life experience. Lastly, weaknesses. It is the limiting attributes. They often drain our energy and result into poor performance. People can be more effective by increasing their strengths and minimizing their weaknesses. Individuals use their realized strengths when possible, but also intentionally look for ways to increase use of their unrealized strengths. Stated another way, we should capitalize on our strengths, but also seek our ways to express our unrealized strengths. In addition, the model recommends that we try to moderate our use of learned behaviors and minimize our use of our weaknesses. Strengths based leadership in practice. How are strengths used in leadership? Although there are no established leadership theories on how to practice leadership from a strength perspective, many useful applications can be made from strengths research in everyday leadership situations. Strengths emerge from our basic personality traits. We all have unique personality traits and therefore we all have unique strengths. No one is without strengths. According to the author Mackey in year 2016, he suggests that our leadership capability is enhanced when we are able to discover our fully utilized strengths, underutilized strengths, and weaknesses. The challenge we face is identifying our strengths and then employing them effectively in our leadership and personal lives. Discovering your strengths requires you to concentrate on your positive attributes and those times when you feel inspirited. To do so, you need to pay attention to your successes rather than focusing on your weaknesses or failures. There are several ways in discovering your strengths. If you are enrolled in my class, Executive Leadership and Supervisory Development, leadership questionnaires are provided alongside with this YouTube link. If you are not enrolled in my class, you may complete strength questionnaires in Strength Finder 2.0, VIA-IS, and R2 Strengths Profiler that are available online. Next, you can complete the Reflected Best Self exercise, which can be found at http website provided in the next slide. And then, you can complete the Discovering Your Strength exercise that will be provided to you during our discussion. Lastly, you can engage in a self-assessment of what you believe to be your strongest attributes. These myriads of methods for discovering strengths will allow you to painlessly develop a definitive list of your major strengths. Second, develop your strengths. You must acknowledge your strengths and be prepared to reveal them to others. For example, do not hesitate to engage in activities like brainstorming or creating a vision for your group or organization. The point is that you should lead from your strengths. Your strengths represent the best you have to offer in influencing others. On the other hand, leaders must not only recognize and capitalize on their strengths, but also be able to identify their weaknesses and address them. These allow you to work to improve them and to recognize situations where your weaknesses can be a liability to your leadership. Third, recognize and engage the strengths of others. In addition to employing their own strengths, leaders need to recognize and engage the strengths of their followers. They need to determine what followers are good at doing and help them do it. Educators who study group dynamics and the roles individuals play in effective groups often say, people do what they do best. What they mean by this is that individuals often become engaged and contribute positively to groups when they are allowed to do what they are good at and feel comfortable doing. People feel comfortable in groups when they can contribute to the group from their strengths. However, it is important to note that others' strengths may not always be directly recognizable. Followers may have strengths that are not observable because their situations don't allow for many facets of their overall abilities to emerge. Therefore, it is important to find opportunities outside followers' normal realm of duties or activities that will allow their strengths to emerge. High performing teams and work groups process strengths in four domains: executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Knowledge of followers' strengths is a valuable tool to help leaders to build effective groups. Lastly, fostering a positive strengths based environment. Multiple studies by researchers in positive organizational scholarship indicate that companies and organizations that create positive work environment have a positive psychological impact on employees, and in turn, this has advantageous impact on their performance. In the book Positive Leadership by Cameron in 2012 argues that leaders who want to create a positive work environment should attend to four areas. First, climate relationship. Positive climate. Leaders should foster among their employees virtues such as companion, forgiveness, and gratitude. Second, positive relationship. Leaders need to highlight individuals' positive images and strengths rather than their negative images and weaknesses. Next, positive communication. Leaders must be supportive, make more positive than negative statements, and be less negatively evaluative of others. Lastly, positive meaning. In these organizations, by emphasizing the connection between employees' values and the long term impact of their work. Strength based leadership has been given much attention in recent years because researchers believe it can have a significant impact on the way leaders choose to lead and on the performance of followers. A strength is defined as an attribute or quality of an individual that accounts for successful performance. In simple terms, a strength is what we do when we are performing at our best. Important note: leaders have an obligation to help uncover others' strengths and then integrate these strengths into building more productive teams. Let me share what I have learned from the book I recently read, Hacking Executive Leadership by Emily Sanders. The first part of the book talks about failure. Executive leaders have special relationship with failure. It is natural to feel fear of failure, but there's always wisdom in failure. Failure is always a progress in the making. It is a stepping stone to success. The following are the tips on how to transform failures to a process of success. Number one, know where you are in the process. Look at the reality of the situation. Failure happens. Are you in the process of learning from experience? Use the lessons learned from experience to continue to move up. Use the failure to become skill by undergoing deep practice. Use your time efficiently by developing the skills. Number two, turn the volume down. The volume of negative thinking must turn down. Look at the positive side of the situation. Negative assumption is called internal experience. How audience evaluate your performance is called external experience. Sometimes our negative assumptions overpower the external experience of the audience. Remember, growth and perfection can't coexist. Swizzle. Swizzle, as defined, means to take the best components with the several different items and combine them to make a new, better item uniquely applied by an individual. In short, absorb what is useful, discard what is not, only take what's worked for you. You may idolize someone, but do not impersonate. You can be motivated by the success stories, but you can have your own success stories. Finally, look out for sizzles. Look for opportunities. Optimize your experiences. And the most important, be yourself. Contact lens. Everything you see, pass through it. If your contact lenses are yellow, everything you see is yellow. Contact lenses are close to you that sometimes you forget they are on. These lenses are your hidden beliefs. Hidden beliefs are the childhood experiences, religion, education, and the influence of the people around you. These beliefs lead to feelings, and feelings lead to action. Choose your lenses. For example, if you choose to wear angry lenses, you'll be carrying negative emotions. That negative feelings will lead you to react negatively on any circumstances. That reaction may lead to negative outcome. Tip: make sure your lenses serve you well. What lens lead the best version of you? The book also talks about the playbook, part 1 and 2. Playbook is a collection of strategies separated by discipline. It encourages to have your own playbook according to your leadership. In writing your own playbook, it is recommended to consider the following. First, circles and assign the meaning. Imagine 3 circles in your mind. The first circle is the external factor. Second circle is your response or reaction. The third circle is the outcome. You don't have the control over the external factor, but your response may lead to positive outcome. Your response is very crucial. Decision-making skills make the difference. But if something negative happened, you may think of this is the beginning of the next chapter. Or this is the worst thing and this is the end. Be motivated of the next chapter. Always look at the positive side. Next, double your strength. Use your natural strength. Don't be threatened by others. Instead, recruit them to be part of your team. Next, change your mind. Don't waste time in a bad scenario. If you can change it, you can change your decision anytime once it won't benefit your organization anymore. And then, spend your time wisely. Pay attention to what you are paying attention to. Next, break it down, way down. Break the big steps into smaller steps. Break the first big chunk to smaller steps until you reach baby steps. Baby steps are something you can do easily. Next, love the process and have fun. Make the process fun so you can do it again and again. Finally, act confidently. You can figure it out and you can handle it. Act confidently. There are other topics being discussed like business lessons, creating a team, communication, recruiting and hiring, but those topics are better discussed included in other YouTube links. To end this presentation, let me leave you with notations. Being a leader is challenging, exciting, and rewarding, and carries with many responsibilities. Leaders inspire people. Leaders influence people. Leaders have visions. Leaders can uplift the strengths of the people. Leader prioritize the achievement of goals of the organization without sacrificing the common good of the people.